Be strong.
Lemmer gives a look of approval as the patriarch further elaborates that depending on the intensity of the training, even someone without an aura can have a strong aura burst. Adhering to all the concerns, Lemmer now asks if all questions have been answered before exclaiming for the test to begin. He then calls forth Lunance Leon, who slowly steps forward among the students to the head instructor. And now that she stands before him, he explains that the aura burst that he will test her with is of a level that she can endure if she has trained her hardest, and she will pass if she gets through his barrier to touch him. Once all the details have been made clear, the test now begins, and Lemmer smiles before a strong green aura rushes forth at Lunan, who blocks the wave of energy with her arms. The brilliant sword of the Zygarde family mentions that it will count as a fail if she uses her own aura and calls her to awaken the mental power she has trained. But the aura is strong, and the wave of energy does not seem to stop. Lunan struggles, and slowly but surely, she manages to take a step forward with her hand reaching out at the head instructor that stands before her. And before we know it, Lunan's hand grabs hold of Lemmer's hand, marking the end of the test. He grabs Lunan close to him as she slumps over him with exhaustion, and remarks her passing the test is easy. Lunan huffs and breathes heavily, trying to catch her breath while her head instructor commends her hard work, asking her to continue training like she has. Moving on with the next participant, Lemmer calls forth Dorian, and hearing his name from the instructor's mouth, he is perplexed and shaken up with fear. He questions what is the deciding order as his body trembles, and Lemmer remarks that he decides whoever he wants to step forth. Nevertheless, he nervously steps forward, passing by the exhausted Lunan who slumps over, still trying to catch her breath. Leaning over the slouched trainee, Lemmer asks him to do just exactly as Lunan has done, get through his aura burst using the mentality he has trained. But Dorian is skeptical, his voice mumbles, and he asks if that will work because he is best known for being weak-minded. Nothing stops the brilliant sword from testing the trainees to their absolute limit, and without a warning, his aura bursts out and flares violently, while he remarks that if Dorian cannot endure, he will fail. Trying his best, he attempts to endure and plow through the strong burst of energy, but he struggles heavily and falls to the ground. This test is being observed by our hero, who notices that the head instructor's aura burst intensity differs from child to child. He elaborates that the instructor is controlling his intensity based on the child's level and training progress, which makes him now firmly believe that the brilliant sword of the Zygarde family really has been observing each and every student. As Leon assesses Lemmer's teaching skills, his attention now averts to him congratulating the fearful Dorian who trembles but has finally grabbed hold of him while he is on the ground. Lemmer remarks that he has too little confidence in comparison to his skill level and so, he needs to believe in himself a bit more. Following the words of motivation, Dorian belches and pukes all over, contrary to the amazing show of strength he has portrayed by passing the test. Time flows like a river downstream, and one by one the students are called upon by the head instructor for their test. Now comes Baron Zygarde's turn, who exclaims at his call and enthusiastically steps forth to face the test. Lemmer then walks up to the student and mentions that he will begin right away. A huge wave of green energy follows this elaboration as Lemmer hardens his facial expressions and glares down at the capable student that stands before him. Feeling the immense pressure and force of the aura burst, he is startled and agitated, questioning if this is what the others have been going through. He remarks that this is different from observing from the sidelines. He wonders how Lunan and the other students have endured such a difficult test, and he falls to the ground as he kneels to hold his own, exclaiming that he can't even move his feet. Seeing the student fall to his knees, Lemmer now begins to state that his talent is special, more so than anyone, and there are only a few that are comparable to him. But he comments that he and the other children that followed him around have wasted their time training swordsmanship when they don't even know their true will. He also adds that they should have trained their mentality and physical strength instead of training the sword, and mentioning that Buran had used aura every time he was struggling. If he uses it again this time, Lemmer warns him that he will fail the test. Struggling to get through the energy wave, he grits his teeth in frustration. He cannot afford to fail this test here. Falling back into a flashback, we are told how his father looked at his brother on the day he kicked him out. He remembers the cold and cruel look in his father's eyes. He exclaims in fear he will also be abandoned if he does not get through this. This boost of adrenaline, backed up by fear and anxiety, pushes the student to rush forward in desperation. And finally, he grabs hold of Lemmer's leg, being called upon to pass the test. Buran, now exhausted, huffs and catches his breath, while Lemmer remarks that he is only 12 and he should not pretend to be an adult, training only what he should train. Finishing his remarks on the test, Lemmer metaphorically elaborates that he is bound to trip on a stick if he continues to walk while looking up. Moving forward with the test, he now lastly calls upon our hero, Leon Zygarde, to step forward, and he obediently comes forth from among the students. Now standing before the head instructor, Leon dramatically makes his way to the final test to become a martial artist, and as the suspense builds up, Lemmer asks if the young trainee is ready, which is responded by a confident nod. And following the exchange of words, Lemmer remarks that he will begin. A roaring wave of energy now rushes forward through the battle arena at Leon, who stands readily in the face of the strongest aura burst that Lemmer has let out in the whole day. The strangely violent and roaring burst of aura surprises not only Sylvia, who jumps up in concern for her beloved son, but the patriarch too, whose eyes widen as he questions the odd display of power that the student is now to face. Nervous to face the strongest aura burst, Leon asks the head instructor if this really is his test, and Lemmer responds by elaborating that the talent he had foresaw in the capable student was far above what he saw in Burin and Lunan, and so he exclaims for the student to try and endure the aura burst. Blocking the roaring wave of energy, our hero falls into contemplation. He remarks that his potential does not lie in his body, but inside his soul that once suffered a terrible end as an assassin. And while he acknowledges this fact, the wave of energy starts to cut through our hero's feet as he takes a step forward. The atmosphere starts to change, and the head instructor's eyes widen at the student enduring the most powerful aura burst. The patriarch's glare locks onto his grandson too, as the brilliant sword startles at the sight of Leon's unbelievable talent, who continues to step closer and closer to his body. And before you know it, Leon Zygarde has pressed his palm against the head instructor's chest, who exclaims in denial that this really has happened. This amazing talent has the crowd of families in shock too, as their gasps sound and echo throughout the arena. Lemmer and the patriarch widen their eyes in shock, and they are taken by surprise, but the brave young warrior smiles without a hint of exhaustion as he questions if the test is now over. The students too share the same sentiment of denial as they question how the once weak student managed to get through the most powerful display of aura burst today. Following the students, Burin's father and his messenger also jump up in their seats as their eyes widen in shock. Lemmer nervously walks up to the talented student, and the voices of the messenger echo through the arena as he questions how the ill child who hasn't even learned aura managed to make it through such a difficult test. Lemmer blatantly stands before the student and now asks what he really is. Our hero, Leon Zygarde, introduces himself once again, mentioning that the head has been observing him for the last 6 months. But Lemmer is still taken by surprise as he elaborates that he is asking because he has surpassed what he had thought of him. The head instructor also adds that the aura outburst was over the student's level, and he never thought that he would be able to make it through. He was just pranking him. Lemmer is in over his head as he continues to glare down at the young warrior who now stands confidently before the head instructor. Lemmer's contemplation is suddenly broken down when he realizes his position, and nervously announces to apologize for being a little distracted, marking the end of the test. Just as he proceeds to remark the top trainee for this test, Burin's anxiety spikes up as he nervously anticipates the announcement. The crowd was holding its breath in suspense of the results, but their anticipation is met with disappointment and shock when Lemmer announces the top trainee of the 5th training hall to be none other than our young hero, Leon Zygarde. The announcement sparks joy, and tears fall down Sylvia's eyes as she exclaims and jumps up in her seat. Helen shares the same sentiment as she adds in the excitement, pointing out that the young master has done it again. A commotion rises from among the crowd, since family representatives do not seem to be happy with the decision. They question Leon's position as the top trainee. Burin is not having it either, and he points his finger at Leon to elaborate that they are the martial artists of the Zygarde family, and that they should duel to choose the top trainee, rather than test for one. Lemmer assesses Burin's consistent emphasis on the unfair selection, and he comments that the boy is desperate to stand at the top. That startles the young master, who takes a step back to deny the claim. However, stating that the test is already over, he asks the patriarch for help. And after taking a brief moment to think, Glenn Zygarde responds by calling out for his grandson. He remarks that the people do not seem to accept him as the top trainee despite the results, and so he asks if the current top trainee is willing to have a duel with the young master for the top spot. The response from Leon is met with a collectively loud and soundly gasp of shock as he openly denies the offer. He elaborates that the test is already over with the results that speak for themselves, and he is not interested in fighting in a duel when there is no reward at the end. Our hero moves his gaze at the young master who always talked about honor and direct lineage, telling him that he's being a sore loser by standing in denial over the results of a fair test. Burin is startled, and he scoffs with frustration at Leon. Finding no other way to prove the new talent's capabilities, the patriarch then suggests that he fights in a duel over the position of the top trainee, and if he wins, he will be rewarded with a bronze plaque. Leon is immediately alerted upon hearing of that condition, and reminds himself the bronze, silver, and gold plaque rewards are given to those who have accomplished something special in the family. He explains that these plaques can be used to claim certain valuable rewards in the future. He adds that even though the plaque he will be receiving is bronze, he is sure that he will be able to get pretty decent rewards with its help. So naturally, he accepts the offer, while remarking that maybe Burin really wants the top spot. The Patriarch approves this decision and states that they will begin right away. Leon now stands before his opponent, who has a look of desperation on his face, as the Patriarch adds that this duel will be the real decider of who is deserving of the top trainee title. He explains the details. There will be only one round, and the opponents are only allowed to use their bodies. The head instructor now affirms the duel and swings his hand, marking the beginning of the fight. Burin immediately rushes forward at his opponent, his arm reaching back to muster up a powerful punch. The fist flies next to Leon's face as his eyes widen at the sudden attack. This is followed up by an immediate kick to the face that is blocked by Leon as he hardens his facial expressions in light of the heated battle that unfolds in the arena. Burin now charges up his fist as blue energy spirals around his body. He calls it the Righteous Tiger Fist that his father has taught him personally. Since this move is a martial arts fist technique, the boy exclaims that he's not cheating in any capacity. The charged fist meets Leon's chest, and he attempts to block the attack. The fight unfolds as the two students fight to prove themselves, and the other students cheer upon Burin's talented capabilities, remarking that Leon can't do anything against the young master. Amidst the fight, Burin gives it his all. He needs this victory more than anything. He glares down at the opponent he has always considered inferior, and his pride won't let him stand above him at any cost. He recalls his dark past, looking at the cruel treatment his father gave his brother as he asked him not to concern himself over such a weakling, one who has no place in their family. Afraid to disappoint his father like his brother, the boy feels incredibly desperate. Knowing that his father is watching over him, the scared Burin enrages, pushing himself even further in order to prove his worth. A barrage of punches faces our hero, as Burin tells himself that he cannot, at any cost, let someone like Leon keep him from falling behind and disappointing his father. Just as the punches flow through him and he attempts to dodge, the attacks appear to become slower and slower, almost as if they were being launched in slow motion. Leon now expresses that he can clearly see his opponent, his fists, his flow of attack, and where they are aimed. Burin notices his opponent lagging behind in thought, and makes his move as he yells and rushes forward, questioning if the weakling has finally decided to give up. Leaping in midair, he prepares to strike Leon with a powerful punch, but our hero does not give up this easily. He also cocks back his fist to charge up a counterattack, and glares fiercely at his opponent. The fist charges forward with a dramatic eruption, and Leon leaps forward to attack. His fist meets his opponent's, and a sparkle of energy is let out. Our hero wins this clash as his fist slips away, aiming directly for Burin's chest. Burin is taken aback when his attack is pushed back by Leon's strong punch. His eyes widen, and he scoffs with frustration. He questions how this is possible, looking back at the fist he charged up, continuing to rush forward to attack. Golden lightning sparks around Leon's body as he moves forward with a vicious gaze, and charges up another powerful punch before striking Burin in the gut. Finally, the boy is blasted away upon impact as he groans in pain. The crowd lets out yet another resounding gasp, unable to believe that young Master Burin was defeated once again. Burin's father jumps up from his seat and grits his teeth in agitation, as a man yells out that this is impossible. The Patriarch, too, is taken by surprise when his supposedly incompetent grandson defeats the talented young master. The voice of the man from earlier exclaims that the move performed by Leon is in fact the Righteous Tiger's Fist. Continuing the man's sentence, Burin questions our hero. His voice shakes, and he trembles while attempting to get up from the ground, asking him how he was able to use his martial arts skill. And standing confidently once again, Leon blatantly answers that Burin showed him how it was done, and simply copied him in return. This boy never fails to surprise us, always defying his body's limits to accomplish the impossible. Shocking jumps and sound gasps unfold from among the crowd of families that spectate the duel that has taken place, and they question Leon's Righteous Tiger Fist, asking how he is able to perform such a move without having learned any aura. Nervousness fills the arena as the surprised families begin to speculate that maybe the student had learned the skill in secret, which they believe is the only logical explanation. They still cannot seem to process our young hero's victory, as he grips his fist to massage away the slight pain. Lemmer stands before the victorious Leon, who is standing in front of the defeated Burin. The boy finally bows down in shame, accepting his defeat. Meanwhile, Lemmer has to cover his gaping mouth with his hand to hide his astonishment at the shocking results. Assessing Leon's incredible show of intelligence, he elaborates that Leon countered Burin's attack by having him spin in the other direction. He mentions that just seeing the flow of one's opponent makes them worthy of being called a genius in the world of martial arts. Concluding his assessment, he explains that Leon used the flow to make his opponent's technique his own. Lemmer believes that this kind of talent easily sets someone on the path to being the strongest on the continent. And now that he has seen it for himself in Leon, he expresses that this is the kind of talent that the Patriarch had wanted, naming it to be perpetual talent. The duel has come to an end, and Lemmer announces to the audience that the results speak for themselves, concluding the test by deeming our hero victorious. Just as the test is called to be concluded, a woman rushes past the crowd of families and makes her way to the battlefield, her arms reaching forward for a hug. The charging woman is noticed by Leon, who recognizes her as his mom, Sylvia. Her eyes fill up with awe and joy as she firmly hugs her son in a beautiful moment. This concludes the martial arts training test, ending on a heartfelt moment as Sylvia sheds tears of joy, while Wrath annoyingly flares up and asks to go home quickly because he's hungry. Lunen's passing of the test is also celebrated by her parents, who hug their child and cry tears of joy too, with her father holding her close and comforting her. Burin is also taken away by his father's messenger, who walks with him with a gloomy look on his face. Burin's eye catches his father from among the crowd, glaring down at him with a disappointing look on his face, before turning away and mixing in between the crowd. The poor boy feels the weight of his father's disappointment as he slouches over and falls into deep despair. This concludes the day, and night falls upon the continent soon after. An annex reveals Burin standing in front of his father's desk, who has his face turned away from his son. Silence fills the room as Burin continues to fall into a state of despair, but he is taken aback when Karan Zykhart, the boy's father, suddenly calls his name with a heavy voice. It shakes the young warrior up, and he stutters as he responds to his call. Karan questions if the incompetent warrior remembers what he had been asked, and Burin states that his father had asked him to become the top trainee, and not to lose to anyone. His voice shakes as he struggles to mutter the simplest of words in front of his intimidating father. The pressing father expresses that he had not asked much of his incompetent son, elaborating that he simply needed him to defeat the Slayon family's Lunan and get the position of the top trainee. He then slowly turns his chair to face his son, and immediately yells out in a furious rage, exclaiming that he lost to the son of an insect who has already lost all of her status. He questions if Burin had intended to shame his father from the beginning. He continues to confront his son, asking if he wants to end up like his brother as well. This alerts Burin, who is shaken up at the sudden mention of the same treatment as his brother. Concluding the confrontation, Karan Zykhart expresses that his son has already lost his first chance, but there is still room for him to redeem himself. So, he asks him to become the top trainee once again by the time of their graduation. Done with what he had to say, the father commands his disappointing son to leave his sights immediately, and of course, Burin obeys in shame and despair. Walking out of the annex under the pale moonlight, he wipes away the sadness and holds his head in his hand, expressing that he must not miss this last chance if he wants to live like someone of the direct lineage from the Zykhart family. Concluding the declaration of confidence, he then smacks his fist against the wall in frustration, making it crack upon impact. I guess my dude is angry, but if you ask me, his father is just a bitch. Burin continues to curse our innocent hero, Leon Zykhart, exclaiming that it's all because of that damn bastard. He blames him for putting him in such a dire situation with his father. Sadly walking with shame and regret, he wonders why he has been put in such a position, when he had worked hard enough not to lose or fall behind anyone else. Walking mindlessly brings the young warrior in front of a mysterious building as he continues to hold his head in his hands, and he gazes upon the location he has brought himself, wondering why he is here. The realization then dawns upon him. He has come here out of habit, and he steps into the building as he looks around his surroundings. But then, he questions his intent in coming to this place, wondering if he has come here because the test had just ended today. However, that does not seem plausible, because there is no one else in the building except him. Wandering about the training hall, he picks up weights and begins to train, when suddenly, his eyes fall upon the locker boxes beside him, and he slowly walks up to them. His eye is set on one particular box, and that is today's top trainee, Leon Zykhart's. He stands before the box marked with his name, and he stops to look around for someone suspicious. He believes that just a peek won't hurt, elaborating that he is not stealing anything, which is enough for him to justify his suspicious behavior to himself. However, he is soon taken by surprise. His eyes open wide when he opens the drawer to find a bunch of used shoes. He is confused and wonders what all of this means. Elaborating that there are at least 10 pairs of shoes, he questions the fact that Leon has used up all of them in just 6 months, when he himself had to change his shoes only twice. Picturing his opponent's training regime, he suddenly turns around to see an image of Leon training diligently as he lifts his weights non-stop. Looking over at this image, the realization finally dawns upon Burin. He recalls that Leon was always seen training. He then expresses remorse as he elaborates on Leon's consistent hard work, even when he pretended to be cool by swinging the sword and neglecting basic training, simply wasting his time by resting in the dormitories. He remarks that Leon's training discipline is the real Zykhart way. He now finally realizes that he has always done the opposite of what he thought was the right way to represent his family. And as he glares down at our hero's worn-out shoes, the boy couldn't help but loathe himself. Suddenly, his weird actions click in his head, and he cautiously looks over at the training bench once again, only to find no one is sitting there. Accepting his mistakes, he puts Leon's shoes back in their place and makes his way out of the training hall. He is now changed and motivated, determined to change himself and make his family proud. Still holding a grudge against Leon's unexpected victory in the martial arts training test, Wrath expresses his frustration. He states that he has lived hundreds of lives, but he has never seen anyone like our young hero. He then confronts Leon and asks what exactly he is, but Leon stays uninterested in this interrogation, claiming that he does not know and Wrath is free to imagine all he wants. Moving on, a message window appears in front of the young warrior, who now asks the spirit to tell him what the skill displayed on the window is. Wrath replies by acknowledging the skill is legendary senses, claiming that such a skill is unfit for someone like Leon. He then expresses that the skill expands the range of one's senses, although it is at a 1-star level, resulting in just a 10% increase. Wrath boasts that using this skill, he was able to tenfold his normal senses, and Leon seems amused by this statement. Moving on, Leon steps away from his bed as the spirit of the demon lord follows him around. Leon asks why the skill has this particular name, and Wrath explains that it's just a name he made up, believing that it sounds cool. Of course, Leon does not agree and expresses that Wrath has awful taste in naming things. This sparks a furious chant from the spirit of the demon lord, who yells out that the young warrior does not even have an artistic sense, and he would not recognize uniqueness. Continuing with the story, some time has passed. As the sun shines upon the annex, our hero and Sylvia are taken by surprise when a voice notifies them that the patriarch has summoned the young master. Sylvia is immediately filled with anxiety and persuasively questions if her son has done something wrong. However, the butler who delivered the message chuckles and asks her to calm herself, because there is absolutely nothing to worry about. The butler then elaborates that the patriarch just wants to give the bronze plaque reward to the young master himself. Following the summoning, Leon now bows before the patriarch to greet him, who is sitting boldly upon his throne. While Leon continues to bow down, the patriarch expresses that although he is not willing, he must keep his promise. He signals the butler to bring out the item, which is exactly what he does. The bronze plaque is now presented before our hero. As promised, Glenn Zygarde announces that he bestows this bronze plaque upon his grandson, Leon Zygarde. He explains that if he is to return the plaque later on, he is to receive an item of the same value. Glaring down and thinking for a brief moment, Leon contemplates his options and says that he would like to ask for a reward right now. He mentions his mother, alerting the patriarch, who did not expect her name to be mentioned in this sitting. Leon continues and asks his grandfather what he has to do in order for her to regain her position in the family. The patriarch is immediately taken off guard, and the butler sighs in anticipation. Glenn wonders if his grandson wants to restore his mother's direct lineage title, and Leon affirms while he squints his eyes, expressing that the patriarch's energy now feels a lot softer. Glenn then mentions that such a feat is possible if one manages to gain enough accomplishments for the family, but he emphasizes that it is not that simple. Explaining the matter, he adds that gaining others' acknowledgement in this matter is like picking the moon from the night sky. He expresses it to be a difficult task, especially for a kid like him. Leon carefully listens to his grandfather's words as he glares down at his bronze plaque. And after listening carefully to what his grandfather had to say, Leon smiles and states that at least it's possible. He places the bronze plaque back into the butler's tray, and thanks the patriarch for his response. Our hero now makes his leave as he steps away, but he is immediately stopped by a call from the patriarch. Just as he responds to the call, the patriarch states that the young warrior has only asked a question, which he would have answered even without the bronze plaque. This surprises the young warrior, who is taken aback by the patriarch's sudden change in tone. He remarks that he had never anticipated the Northern King of Annihilation to behave so softly. The King of Annihilation then proceeds to ask the young warrior about his proper reward, and firmly tightening his fists, Leon contemplates that there is indeed one thing that he desires the most right now. He reveals his wish and asks the patriarch for a special training technique, which the king blatantly answers by saying that the instructors will teach him that during his basic training. However, Leon elaborates that he needs better aura training than what they teach at the training halls, so he asks the patriarch to teach him a training technique equivalent in value to the bronze plaque. Back in our hero's mind, he expresses that the shadow technique he used in his past life is not enough. To restore his mother's former title, and to confront his worst enemy, Daruth, he will need a much stronger and better aura. Hearing his grandson's wish, the patriarch mentions a training technique. An immediate flick of the finger reveals a door that opens into the hall as a bright light shines through. Unable to do anything but stand there in a daze, our young hero gazes upon the countless bookshelves that appear out of nowhere, surrounding him from all sides. Suddenly, he now stands next to tall bookshelves filled with countless books. He begins to speak, but the patriarch sneaks through one of the bookshelves as he finishes his sentence. He tells the young warrior that these are a collection of a few books of the Zygarde family, and explains that if the young warrior places his hand in the middle, the book he wants the most will appear before him in the blink of an eye. Acknowledging and understanding the instructions now, Leon reaches forth his hand in nervousness. He expresses that he needs something better than the shadow training technique, hoping that something good will come out. While our hero reaches out his hand, the magic of the veil dramatically slides a book out of a bookshelf, and it suddenly appears before him, falling right into his hand. As the book falls into our hero's hands, he notices the worn-out panels and cover, making him question its origins. But seeing this particular book fall into the young warrior's hand, the patriarch, along with the butler, are both taken by surprise. It seems as if the presence of this book has alerted them. The patriarch immediately sits up from his throne in agitation, and yells out to question why that particular book falls into his hands. But it is too late for him to do anything, as the book now appears before our hero, and the pages begin to flip rapidly while he reaches out his hand to grab it. As he reaches for the book, he notices the title, Thousand Flames Technique. He wonders in curiosity what kind of training technique this is. However, his excitement and curiosity soon turn into shock and despair. The book suddenly starts to flutter violently, and a strong wave of energy bursts out in front of Leon. He takes a step back while his eyes stay locked onto the book. Golden energy bursts forth around Leon as pages fly out, roaring among the surroundings, while the patriarch gracefully observes the situation unfold with an observant glare. Recalling past events, this is when we are told the backstory behind the patriarch's cold motives. A man questions if he thinks that Sylvia is being ostracized by the family, but he does not pay heed to his daughter's concerns. He remarks that it's none of his business, and his priority is to ensure the family's growth. The man reports that Sylvia had left the family with a man, but this does not spark any retaliation or remorse from the father, who coldly commands that such trivial matters must not be reported to him. Glenn now narrates his story, saying that in the past, he believed emotions to be useless and only concerned himself with the power of the family. That achieved him great transcendent martial prowess and the title of the most powerful family on the continent. However, he grieves while expressing that all he attained was nothing compared to what he had ultimately lost. Another flashback takes us back to when a messenger reports to the patriarch about her daughter, Sylvia, and her husband being ambushed, which results in a look of despair and agony upon the patriarch's face. The reporter adds that they were ambushed by Eden, who recognized the patriarch's daughter. The daughter is fine, but the other two with them died on the scene. Glenn trembles in sadness and anger as he holds the report given to him by the messenger. He then narrates that it was such an unexpected ambush that the proper response was pathetic and painful. He elaborates that he had finally regained his emotions, but he adds that nothing can turn back time. Concluding his narration, he addresses Leon and his daughter Sylvia, stating that this time, even if they hate him, he will protect them no matter what. The energy bursts diminish and disperse to reveal our hero, who appears to be confused. He looks over at his hands as he expresses that something odd is going on with his body, almost as if something is flowing into his head. Just then, he is called upon by the patriarch, who glares down at him. Leon stands in a daze, his eyes wide open with nervousness, while his grandfather asks him what he has done. Our hero blatantly expresses his concern, elaborating that he himself does not know. He explains that he only remembers the contents of the training technique. When the patriarch asks him about the name of that technique, Leon briefly observes the strange new feeling of power that flows through his body, before stating the name to be the Thousand Flames technique. This is when a message window pops up, notifying our hero that the Thousand Flames technique has been saved in the memory. After the thunderous reveal of Leon's newfound technique, the patriarch now confronts our hero to ask if he knows the contents of the book as well. And naturally, Leon affirms the statement. Glenn Zygarde calmly sits back on his throne, acknowledging the young warrior's new talent, and excusing him to leave since he has already received his reward for the bronze plaque. Leon obediently steps out of the hall as the doors close behind him with a resounding thud, wearing a look of confusion as he leaves the annex. After the young warrior has left the hall, the butler turns to the patriarch, skeptical of the training technique that the young master now possesses. But before the butler can finish raising his concerns, the patriarch stops him in the middle. For our explanation, he narrates that the technique belongs to the first ever Zygarde patriarch, and he expresses that no one else in the entire family's history has ever been able to take the book into their possession, nor have they called forth the book inside the veil. The patriarch now seems to be concerned for the safety of his daughter and the exceptionally talented grandson, while the butler shares the same sentiment as he warns him of possible dangers. Glenn asks him not to worry, because no one else knows about the Thousand Flames technique. Our hero smiles as he walks out with a new and improved training technique.